My name is Bill. Tonight's episode, Backwards Masking Songs. Of course, backwards masking is the recording technique by which certain musical groups hide frightening messages in the final release of their songs. A lot of these songs are very popular, and we will play parts of them tonight. And we're starting right now. Here at UltimateClassicRock.com is an article by Rob Smith entitled Unmasking Backmasking, Classic Rockers' Secret Messages. And the author begins, "It must have been odd to hear Led Zeppelin in church, particularly one of the fundamentalist Christian persuasion. But in the late 70s and early 80s, youth pastors around the country began to play Stairway to Heaven in services to illustrate these satanic messages they claimed the band had hidden in the song. These messages could be heard when playing the song backward, they said. But the subliminal effect of the messages was said to be just as potent, even when the song was played in the usual direction, at regular speed. There was, however, definitely a market in religious books, films, and presentations in that period on the issue of backmasking, the alleged planting of subliminal messages in recordings, and the actual planting of subliminal messages in recordings, usually for dark purposes, according to this author. It caused preachers and kids alike to ruin the belt drives on their turntables, playing Led Zeppelin 4 and dozens of other records backward. Of that, I'd like to see some proof. Where did this stuff begin? Not entirely surprisingly, famed occultist and fundamentalist bugaboo Aleister Crowley is credited with starting the whole thing. In his 1913 treatise on meditation, Magic Book 4, Crowley promoted the idea of listening to phonograph records reversed, to train one's brain to think backward. Subsequently, avant-garde composers such as John Cage and Edgar Varese, a favorite of Frank Zappa, used reverse tape effects in their versions of musique concrète, or experimental music, that used recorded sounds as quasi-instrumentation. In rock and roll, the effect became an important tool for experimentation in the late 60s, as musicians began using the studio to explore sounds that were more radical than your typical guitar, drums, bass, and keyboard. The Beatles were probably the granddaddies of using tape effects. John Lennon was an unabashed fan of avant-garde artists and incorporated their techniques first on the song Tomorrow Never Knows, the final song on 1966's Revolver. And all through the album of 1967, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That experimentation, coupled with the elevated place the Beatles had in popular culture, led listeners to do odd things with their Beatles records. A widely believed urban legend that Paul McCartney had died sent some fans looking for clues in the music. Of course, they found what they were looking for. Playing the number 9 segment of the White Album's Revolution 9 backward yielded a sound that resembled Turn Me On, Dead Man. Backward spins of I'm So Tired led fans to hear Paul is dead. Miss him. Miss him. These were unintentional sounds made. When one played the record in an unintended fashion, people heard what they wanted to hear or what others suggested. Meanwhile, around the same time, Hendrix was making Electric Ladyland, an album that opened with And the Gods Made Love, a track that intentionally incorporated backmasking. Play the garbled voice on the song backward, and you hear Jimi Hendrix say, Yes, 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 I get it. Okay, one more time. At some point in the next decade or so, fundamentalist preachers took up backmasking as an example of satanic influence in rock music. Another method of the pointy-tailed one to degrade the morals of vulnerable youth, right under the noses of their unsuspecting parents. For example, fans of ELO's who bought 1974's El Dorado album or Can't Get It Out of My Head would have allegedly received a satanic message had they flipped the album over and played the title track. Those with ears for these things played the lines, "Here it comes another lonely day, playing the game I'll sail away, on a voyage of no return to see the backward and heard." Oh, wait. On a voyage of no return to see. They played this backward and they heard, "He is the nasty one. Christ, you are infernal. It is said we are dead men. Everyone who has the mark will live." Sounds like a bunch of lies to me. Electric Light Orchestra frontman and mastermind Jeff Lynne got so sick of hearing questions about the alleged messages, he planted one in the band's next album, Face the Music. A bit of gibberish in the intro to Fire on High, when played backward, is revealed to be drummer Bev Bevan saying, "The music is reversible, but time is not. Turn back, turn back, turn back, turn back." The Eagles' 1976 hit, Hotel California, one of the seminal songs of the decade, is said to have hidden its first verse and chorus a message that includes, "Satan had him. He organized his own religion." That's from the Eagles. Styx were accused of implanting a satanic message. Satan Move in Our Voices in Snowblind off of 1981 album Paradise Theater. That controversy provided the seed of an idea that led Dennis DeYoung to create the character of Dr. Righteous. In 1983's Kilroy Was Here, and to plant an intentional backmasked message in the track Heavy Metal Poisoning. Cheap Trick, not exactly avowed devil worshippers, were said to have injected the message, "Satan holds the keys to the lock," in their song Gonna Raise Hell. Not all supposed backmasking was in praise of the devil. Queen's international hit, Another One Bites the Dust, was said to contain a message encouraging listeners to decide to smoke cannabis. Excuse me. Not to be outdone by other artists doing creepy things on their records, Pink Floyd put out a congratulatory message in the track Empty Spaces on the Wall album. The whole thing got so silly, even Weird Al Yankovic got into the act, intentionally backmasking the message, "Satan eats cheese whiz," on his 1984 album cut, Nature Trail to Hell. Accusations of backmasking reached a heated and tragic pitch in 1990 when Judas Priest was taken to court over the accusation that their lyrics and embedded backward messages had driven two fans to self-harm, the ultimate in self-harm. Attorneys argued that they heard the words "do it" in the song, "Better by you, better than me." Priest was exonerated of the charges. The band's defense had proved their culpability so untenable as to cast backmasking from the courtroom back to the pulpit. And though there are still some who continue to find evil or naughty hidden messages in today's pop music, Lady Gaga and Britney Spears in particular stand accused, and we'll be hearing them shortly, a little later in the program. The issue remains relegated to the minds of those who want to hear what they want to hear in a bunch of backward noise. In the end, that may be where the issue began. Let's check out some art.
I'm going to fast forward now, and you can kind of get a feel for the song. Very mellow, you know, almost pretty.
All right, now you're going to play this backwards.
Right. To get critics even, you know, or the skeptics, to show them what I'm going to do, I've actually taken the exact piece of tape that you just heard it off of, and I've reverse thread the machine, and I'm going to play that exact piece of tape backwards now. Okay, just to
prove that you've not doctored it in any way.
I have not doctored it in any way. All right, let's go ahead and start.
Two Feathers asks, how do you play a record backwards? It's probably really hard to do if you have a belted turntable, because if you would have to turn the turntable backwards, and you won't be able to play through the speakers normally, unless you want your belt to be running at the same time and ruin your belt. Of course, at radio stations, they can play whatever direction they want, and it's really easy to do on a computer. There's a story at sundial.csun.edu by Kayla Fernandez entitled Backmasking, Demonic Subliminal Messages in Music, a Sundial curated playlist. Many people have associated Motorhead's music with the devil and selling your soul. At first, it was quite a laugh, because it is simply music. But when this song is played in reverse, you might second-guess yourself. Played forwards, it sounds like an angered growl, but reversed it says, and this is a long quote, it's 4 sentences. Reversed it says, now tell me about your miserable little lives. Why are these guys that do the backmasking always so angry? I do not subscribe to your superstitious, narrow-minded flights of paranoia. I and people like me will always prevail. You will never stifle our free speech in any country in the world, because we will fight forever. He ends on a positive note, at least. When the song was released, Motorhead was going through an intense legal battle with their record company, and this was supposedly their message to Riot. The thrash metal band incorporates numerous Slayer. The thrash metal band incorporates numerous backmasking messages in their 1985 album, Hell Awaits. There's a soft, unnerving chant that says, join us, 45 times. Another message that was slipped into this song were the words, welcome back. Later on, lead singer Tom Araya admitted that they were just playing into the demonic imagery that was painted around the band's identity, but it was never meant for sincere satanic rituals. The Beatles' I'm So Tired. Perhaps one of the most well-known backmasking conspiracies in music history. Thank you, Ethereal Warrior, for the super chat. Ethereal Warrior says, missed you, Bill and crew and chat. Number 9, but I don't miss Yoko. Yeah, there's a few that really great on the ears. Thank you, Ethereal Warrior. Towards the end of the song, I'm So Tired, John Lennon is heard speaking some sort of gibberish, but when flipped, some might hear, Paul is a dead man. Miss him, miss him, miss him. This ties into the infamous Paul is Dead conspiracy. It was theorized that back in 1966, Paul McCartney died in a horrific car crash, and the music industry replaced him with a double. Believers of the theory state that the rest of the Beatles snuck clues into their music to tell fans what really happened to Paul. Choking victim, Hate Your State. This is an American punk rock band from 1992 to 1999. They were known for mixing ska and hardcore punk, but also for writing unapologetic, direct lyrics with no warning for listeners. If you play the intro of the track, Hate Your State, backwards, you will get this message in return. Viewer warning, it is, again, it's a little bit angry. You think you're alive, mofo. You're just the walking effing dead. You're effing sheep, stepping on my back to stay alive. West Coast, East Coast. You're all a bunch of effing fools. And they didn't say effing. And they continue. You and the rest of this greedy effing world, kill yourself. Stay in school. Say no to drugs, and oh yeah, hell, Satan. Good night, boys and girls. Pleasant dreams. Talk about angst. The band Cradle of Filth, which I've never heard until I just read it, in the song Dinner at Deviant's Palace. When played normally, this track is a bunch of creepy gibberish and hushed whispers. Once you play the track backwards, you will hear the Lord's Prayer being recited backwards. If you are unfamiliar with satanic rituals, reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards is said to summon demons, especially during the witching hour. Even though the band claims not to be demonic, as their music comes across, they have stated in multiple interviews that their main outlet of inspiration stemmed from Gothic poetry, mythology, and horror films. Judas Priest, the song Better by You, Better Than Me. Judas Priest became a controversial band when two fans committed extreme self-harm, the most extreme, after supposedly being influenced by the band's lyrics. The backwards message in Better by You, Better by Me continuously repeats, do it. One night in 1985, the two fans, Raymond Belknap and James Vance, went to a church playground and did themselves self-harm. Before Vance's passing, he stated, "We have been programmed. I knew I was going to do it. I was afraid. I didn't want to die. It's just as if I had no choice." That is really sad. The fans' parents took the band to court, but the case was dismissed as the judge ruled that the band was not liable for the deaths. The Eagles, Hotel California, a 70s classic that pays homage to the twisted side of Hollywood. It is said that this hit might hold a deeper and darker meaning. If you take the time to listen to the opening verse backwards, you will hear the words, "Yes, Satan organized his own religion," or "Satan, he hears this. He had me believe in him." It might be silly to believe these hidden messages when the band themselves deny these claims, but strangely, you can make them out. How could it be unintentional? Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven. The accusations of this timeless classic being a tune dedicated to Satan stems from other things the band has done. For example, guitarist Jimmy Page bought a mansion from the famed Satanist Aleister Crowley, and allegedly, he sold his soul to be successful and achieve fame. If this beloved classic rock track is played backwards, you will hear, "Oh, here's to my sweet Satan, the one whose little path would make me sad, whose power is Satan. He will give us those with him 666. There was a little tool shed where he made us suffer, sad Satan." By the way, a lot of these songs are very popular, and we're playing only parts of them tonight. I should have the right to play these selections under fair use. Sadly, the algorithm here takes a different view, and I fear the algorithm may terminate this show tonight before it's even over. I may be shut down at any time, maybe even in the middle of a sentence. Therefore, tonight may be the only chance you get to see this show. Let's check out some art. Here at tonedeaf.thebrag.com is an article entitled 16 of the Best Hidden Tracks and Messages in Famous Songs. We'll get rid of that pop-up. Written by Tyler Jenke. Mr. Jenke begins. There's something to be said for the curious art of bands hiding hidden messages, and even entire songs in their recordings. From the Beatles arguably being the first to introduce the idea in the late 60s, to the accusations of evil messages hidden in the songs of 70s rock bands, right through to the popular 90s tradition of tucking away hidden tracks at the tail end of a CD's running time. It's always been a particularly physical phenomenon. It's also something that's harder to achieve in the digital era. So sit back and enjoy as we uncover the more interesting hidden stories and messages, the secret and the not-so-secret things that musicians have attempted to bury. While hidden tracks are a left-field move for any band, covering a song by a convicted murderer and cult leader goes beyond contrariness. But that's exactly what Guns N' Roses did with the Charles Manson-penned Look at Your Game Girl, which appeared hidden away on their 1993 album, The Spaghetti Incident. And it almost seems wrong to say, but the original is better. In 1982, a U.S. television program alleged that hidden messages were contained in many popular rock songs through a technique called backward masking. The cited example was Stairway to Heaven, which the show claimed included satanic references. The alleged message occurs during the song's middle section, "If There's a Bustle in Your Hedgerow," which very loosely translated to, "Oh, here's to my sweet Satan, the one whose little path would make me sad, whose power is Satan. He will give those with him 666. There was a little tool shed where he made us suffer, sad Satan." You Am I, Forget It, Sister. Widely considered one of the finest Australian albums of all time, Hourly Daily is a sprawling tour of suburban Sydney through the eyes of the laconic Tim Rogers. One of the album's highlights is the hidden track, Forget It, Sister, which arrives after a few minutes of silence following the closer, Who Takes Who Home. Unexpectedly, Rogers chimes in with Good Morning Baby, bringing the record full circle to the early hours and opening Good Morning, an ode to breakfast radio. Nirvana, Endless and Nameless. What's that dark section? That's weird. Excuse me. The nihilistic squall of this hidden track, buried at the quintessential grunge band's iconic Nevermind showcases Kurt Cobain's love for the Pixies' style dynamics, but without his usual interest in the pointed pop melodicism. Instead, it's a crash and bash of tuneless distortion and feverish squeals of nonsense. If Smells Like Teen Spirit broke Nirvana into the mainstream, Endless Nameless was a reminder that Kurt and company were still noisily rebels at heart. Oh, I see. It highlights an ad. It highlights that Love the Beatles ad. Okay, that's the purpose. I'm so easily amused. The Beatles, Her Majesty. Rounding off 1969's Abbey Road is Her Majesty, a Paul McCartney ditty that appears 14 seconds after the end, the album's last listed song. At less than 30 seconds long, there's not much going on. It's just Paul, an acoustic guitar, a lovely vocal melody, and some amusing lyrics, including, Her Majesty is a pretty nice girl, but she doesn't have a lot to say. In fact, the Fab Four are often credited with inventing the secret track phenomenon, with the sound collage at the end of Sgt. Pepper's that loops infinitely on vinyl players. No kidding, I didn't know that. I never heard that in my life. So the last track on the vinyl Sgt. Pepper's album is pressed so it will loop infinitely. Wow. The Jam, English Rose. While Paul Weller spent the 80s reveling in his newfound feminine side with the Style Council, he wasn't always so comfortable with such outward displays of sensitivity. So goes the story behind English Rose, a beautiful acoustic ballad that appears on side 1 of 1978's All Mod Cons. While it plays conventionally as track 4 on all copies of the record, its obscurity is owed to the fact that neither the song's title nor its lyrics were printed on the sleeve, because Weller believed it was too personal. Blur, Me and White Noise, or just Me, White Noise. The hidden track from the Britpop luminaries' last studio album before their hiatus, 2003's Think Tank, recalls one of their most famous collaborators, the voice behind Parklife and mod icon Phil Daniels. Entitled Me, White Noise, the song appears in the pre-gap, the portion of audio before track 1. Clocking in at nearly 7 minutes, Damon Albarn spits gravel over a midnight dance beat. Those desperate for Blur rarities would do well to seek this out. Eels, Mr. E's Beautiful Blues. Mark Oliver Everett and his musical outfit had a minor hit in 2000 with Mr. E's Beautiful Blues, reaching number 11 on the UK singles chart. The lead single from their third record, Daisies of the Galaxy, the band threw fans a curveball by leaving it off the track listing on original pressings of the album, which means the song may be the most commercially successful hidden track ever. Tool, 10,000 Days. It's one thing to hide a song in the pre-gap of an album. The pre-gap? I'm talking about vinyl, right? Is that run-in track on vinyl is, I don't know, maybe 2 seconds? Maybe 1 second? 2 seconds? But the hidden track on Tool's 10,000 Days is wildly different and an inventive proposition. Essentially, it's a do-it-yourself secret that only enterprising Tool fans will be able to piece together. Is there any other kind? Joining Wings of Marie and Veniti Trey together, and then playing them alongside the 11-minute title track, reveals a densely layered epic, cryptic and clever. Pink Floyd, Empty Spaces. The only band popular enough to have their video eliminated from this list. Isolated on the left channel of this track from the classic Pink Floyd album The Wall is a secret message. When played backwards, Roger Waters' voice appears saying, it appears is a visual. Roger Waters' voice surfaces, saying, "Congratulations, you've just discovered the secret message. Please send your answer to Old Pink, care of the Funny Farm, Chalfont." Or Chalfont. A clever nod to the music world's obsession with satanic messages hidden in popular music. A Public Enemy too, right? Public Enemy. Hidden in the gap before the opening track of the furious rap group's 1994 album, Muse Sicken Our Message, is Ferocious Soul, a cutting freestyle attack on those who claimed Public Enemy were anti-black for criticizing the negative message of gangster rap. It's scathing stuff. It's scathing stuff. It ends with a blunt message that leads into the album proper. Don't F with me. Franz Ferdinand, Michael. Played forwards. Michael is a risque indie rock song about a secret bromance, notable for lyrics such as "Stubble on my sticky lips" and "beautiful boys on a beautiful dance floor." Played backwards, however, there's a secret message, with a voice saying, "She's worried about you. Call your mother." According to a fan site, the message is an homage to bassist Bob Hardy, who was worried about calling his mother back home while on tour. Let's check out some art. Here at todayifoundout.com is a story by Gilles Messier, or Gilles Messier. Entitled, Did any musicians actually put backwards satanic messages in their songs? Yes. Next article. And Mr. Messier begins. Here's to my sweet Satan. I sing because I live with Satan. He will give those with him 666. There was a little tool shed where he made us suffer, sad Satan. These are the disturbing words which appear when the 1971 Led Zeppelin masterpiece, Stairway to Heaven, is played in reverse, or so it is widely claimed. In the 1970s and 80s, a moral panic spread among American evangelical groups about rock bands hiding satanic and other subversive messages in their music. These messages, they claimed, were subliminally inserted by recording them backwards, a technique known as backmasking, or backward masking, or backwards masking. This panic reached such hysterical heights that churches across the United States held record smashings and record burnings. Several bands found themselves in court over corrupting lyrics. And the legend of backwards satanic messages became an indelible part of music culture. But did any artists actually hide backwards messages in their music? Well, yes, but not for the reasons their evangelical critics believed. They did it just to make money. I'm putting words in the author's mouth there. The practice of backmasking is as old as sound recording itself. Shortly after patenting the phonograph, in 1877, Thomas Edison experimented with playing recorded music backwards. Noted that the results sounded novel and sweet, but altogether different. The first association between backmasking and Satanism came in 1913, when British occultist Aleister Crowley, in his treatise Magic Book 4, recommended that those interested in black magic listen to phonograph records in reverse, in order to learn how to think and speak backwards. Coincidentally, Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page would later purchase Crowley's former mansion, giving plenty of ammunition to the evangelical satanic panic crowd. Say that 4 times fast. Over the following decades, avant-garde composers like John Cage and Edgar Varese experimented with reversed recordings to create bold new soundscapes, a technique which was later adopted by various rock and roll groups starting in the 60s, including the Beatles. According to John Lennon, after coming home from a party in 1966, he accidentally played a take of the song Rain backwards. Lennon, a fan of avant-garde music, was so enamored by the sound that he included a reversed version of the song's opening line in the fade-out. This is widely considered the first use of backmasking in a pop song. The technique was also heavily featured in the song Tomorrow Never Knows from the Beatles' '66 album Revolver, as well as throughout 1967's album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Unfortunately for the Fab Four, this experimentation would lead to the first great backmasking controversy, as the technique formed a cornerstone of the infamous Paul is Dead urban legend. For the uninitiated, Paul is Dead was a popular conspiracy theory started in 1967, which held that Paul McCartney had in fact died in a car crash on November 9th, 1966, and was subsequently replaced with an impostor. The theory further held that the remaining Beatles attempted to reveal Paul's fate, by planting subtle clues in their songs and in the covers of their albums. Among these supposed clues are the lyric, "The Walrus Was Paul," from the 1968 song Glass Onion, and the cover of 1969's Abbey Road, on which Paul is barefoot and walking out of step with the rest of the band. But the most definitive clues, the theorists claimed, were revealed by playing Beatles records backwards, particularly the 1968 White Album. For example, Revolution 9 supposedly contains the message, "Turn me on, dead man," while the track "I'm So Tired" yields, "Paul is dead, miss him." Of course, the entire Paul is dead rumor is complete nonsense, or is it? And while the Beatles did pioneer the use of backmasking, none of the aforementioned examples were intentional uses of the technique. Rather, these supposed secret messages were merely cases of pareidolia, the tendency of the human brain to perceive patterns in otherwise random data. Other famous examples of pareidolia include the face on the surface of Mars, seen by the Viking 1 spacecraft in 1976, our bicentennial year. The face of the devil seen in smoke, billowing from the World Trade Center on 9/11. And the endless reports of Jesus and the Virgin Mary appearing on slices of toast, among other objects. Research has also shown the strong influence of the observer expectancy effect, as few listeners will perceive the supposed hidden messages unless they've already been primed to do so. Nonetheless, the fact that the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, and other musicians did intentionally use backmasking for fun or artistic effect was enough to convince moral guardians that the technique could also be used for nefarious purposes. The idea of backmasked satanic messages being intentionally hidden in rock music first emerged among American evangelical Christian groups in the late 70s and early 80s as part of a nationwide hysteria known as the Satanic Panic. This panic was kicked off by the 1972 publication of The Satan Cellar by author Mike Warnke, who claimed to have been inducted into and sexually abused by a satanic cult as a child. This was followed in 1980 by the book Michelle Remembers by Michelle Smith, who made similar accusations of ritual abuse, while both accounts were later exposed as frauds. They nonetheless birthed a widespread conspiracy theory that the Church of Satan and other occult groups were secretly controlling the government and the media and abducting or breeding thousands of children for use in orgies, human sacrifices, or other rituals. Throughout the 80s and 90s, nearly 12,000 cases of satanic ritual abuse were reported nationwide, not one of which could be substantiated by the police. According to evangelical groups, the Church of Satan spread its influence by hiding subliminal messages in popular media, particularly rock music, long considered by Christian fundamentalists to be the devil's music, as claimed by evangelical figures like self-described neuroscientist William Yarrell. Let's check out some art.
In the 1990s, this man, he was married, had some kids, and when he was getting divorced, his wife seized upon the satanic panic happening at the time, which is like all absolute moral panic hysteria nonsense. And she convinced her son, who was only 10 years old at the time, John, that he had been put through horrific depraved abuse by his father, to the point that little John, when he was 10 years old or around that age, had to go on the stand and testify against his father with these very sick, graphic details of things that he had been made to believe and convinced had happened to him. The adults in his life were constantly reinforcing to him that, yes, this has happened. Like completely just gaslighting this child into like another realm to convince him that this is real, get him on the stand, and testify against his father. And his dad was sentenced to 20 years, and he had to serve 8 years in prison on this, as someone who was accused of crimes that are this horrific. Now, if you live in America, I do not have to tell you about how serious that is when you're in our prison system. You have a target painted on your forehead, and every day people are looking to end you. I am not joking. Then when he finally got out, he was completely estranged from his children. This is like a devious level of parental alienation, which is like a form of brainwashing.
What happened to the mom?
She died, and so she's never going to be held accountable for what she put this man through. I'm happy for this man. He was awarded a bunch of money by the state, in recompense for him having to serve this sentence, 8 years of his sentence. He was like, I'm going to, hopefully with this money, I can go move closer to my family and make up for lost time. And a triumphant end to a 3-decade-long nightmare rooted in the infamous Satanic Panic, Melvin Quinley, a San Antonio man wrongfully accused and imprisoned for allegedly, let me be clear, leading a satanic cult and committing sexual abuse, has finally been exonerated. Quinley's ordeal began amidst a contentious divorce in 1990, when his wife accused him of heinous crimes tied to satanic rituals. His children, then influenced by their mother, therapists, and law enforcement, developed false memories of abuse and occult practices. Quinley was sentenced to 20 years in prison and served 8 before his release. His conviction carried heavy burdens, including mandatory sex offender registry and estrangement from his children. With the unwavering support of the Innocence Project of Texas and his youngest son, Matthew, Quinley managed to reopen his case, leading to his full exoneration after his oldest son, John, recanted his previous testimonies. Quinley can now finally look forward to a future free from the terrors of the past with the hope of reconnecting with his family.
Here's an interesting article at wikipedia.org. To be specific, en.wikipedia.org, entitled List of Backmasked Messages. Ash. We're not reading that one. Artist source message. At the drive-in. Song is 300 megahertz, the EP. Heard by reversing the song starting at the 94-second mark. The message is composed of rearranged verses from earlier in the song. The Beatles, Rain, and Free as a Bird. We haven't heard Free as a Bird yet, have we? The Beatles in the song Free as a Bird. The message is turned out nice again. Can be heard during the song's fade out. Was commented upon by many newspapers after the album's release in 1995. And the discovery of the message by BBC Radio 5 live producer Simon Clifford. Paul McCartney said, "We even put one of those spoof backwards recordings on the end of the single for a laugh, to give all those Beatle nuts something to do." Beck in the Loser album. After the last time Beck says, "I'm a loser, baby, so why don't you kill me?" And before the vocal, "I'm a driver, I'm a winner." The line is, "I'm a loser, baby, so why don't you kill me?" Entire chorus reversed. Group Boards of Canada, 1969 album. The album called 1969. In the sentence, although not a follower of David Koresh, she's a devoted Branch Davidian. The rest of the sentence is not backmasked. But David Kresh's name is? It's hard to understand the explanation. What's this? Comments. Butthole Surfers in the album Pepper. Between the second chorus and the third verse. I don't mind the sun sometimes. The images it shows. I can taste you on my lips and smell you in my clothes. Cinnamon and sugary and softly spoken lies. You never know just how you look through other people's eyes. That's a pretty good artistic comment. Lyric. To hide. Group Cake. Album Jesus Wrote a Blank Check. This occurred after the song ends. I guess that in the song of the same name. This occurred after the song ends at about 3:06 on the track. Don't forget to breathe in. Here we go. Here's a spicy one from the group Choking Victim. Hate Your State. We talked about that a little bit, right? Hate Your State. Yeah. At the beginning of the song is hidden. You think you're alive, mofo. You're just the walking effing dead. You're an effing sheep, stepping on my back to stay alive. West Coast, East Coast. You're all a bunch of effing fools. And the rest of this greedy effing world. Do self-harm to yourself. Stay in school, say no to drugs, and hell Satan. Good night, boys and girls. Pleasant dreams. The group J Chow. In the album You Can Hear, and the song of the same name, perhaps? Following the same line forwards, this is done intentionally. So if you play it backwards, only you can hear it. And that's the line, only you can hear it. Album. Huh. This always says album. Oh, you click on it for the album. Okay, I get it now. Chumbawamba. In the album Tub Thumper has a track called Mary Mary, where a woman recites the Hail Mary backwards, I guess. That must be creepy. We did that one. Oh, Deep Purple. I can't read all of that stuff. First word I can't read at all. And then mofo, and then Stormbringer. Occurs at the beginning of the song before the first verse in Stormbringer. In the album Stormbringer. Def Leppard. In the album Hysteria. And the song Rocket hides the lyric, We Are Fighting with the Gods of War. And then later on the same album in the song White Lightning, She's Got the Rhythm of Love. From the song Heaven Is, recorded backwards. Deicide. In the album Legion. And the track Satan Spawn. The Cacodemon. At the beginning of the track, accompanied by the bleating of sheep, effectively the same as the chorus. Satan Spawn, Cacodemon. Cacodemon, Satan Spawn, etc., etc. Dio. In the album Holy Diver. And the track Shame on the Night. Starting at the 4-minute 57-second mark, the first two words are reversed. Crucify the diver. Drowning Pool. In the album Sinner. And the song Sermon. There's a reversal of earlier parts of the song. Drummer Mike Luce said, it's just an homage. It's just an homage. A tribute back to the old school. And the line is, ladies and gentlemen, tell me what you believe. Here's another spicy one we haven't covered yet. The Dukes of the Stratosphere, or the Dukes of Stratosphere, and the mini-album 25 O'Clock. And the track The Mole from the Ministry. It's sped up except at the very end of the track. It's taken from a radio interview of the Fugs Tull Kupferberg. Hey, go F yourself with your atom bomb. ELO, a number of ELO songs are featured here. Let's see what we haven't done and what looks good. This looks interesting. In various songs from Secret Messages, their 10th studio album. The songs are Secret Messages, Time After Time, Stranger, Danger Ahead, Rock and Roll is King. And the intended side D track for a double album, Hello My Old Friend. Contains many backwards and hidden messages, both visual and auditory. It was a further response to the Satanic backmasking controversy. Yeah, they were big during the Satanic Panic. The British release contains a parody warning label about the backward messages, but this was deleted by CBS Records for the US version. Probably because of the panicked Satanic. The Panic Satanic. And some of those lines are, welcome to the show. Thank you for listening. Look out, there's danger ahead. Listen to music. You're playing me backwards. Plant a tree. And acquire. It's seriously going to be fun. Missy Elliott. In the album Under Construction and the track Work It. Reversed version of the preceding line. The quote, watch the way Missy like to take it backwards, end quote, message can be heard in the middle of the second verse. I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it. Eminem at the end of the track. In the album 8 Mile. Music from and inspired by the motion picture. And the track Stimulate is hidden. I'm not here to save you. I'm only here for the ride. So let me entertain you, and everything will be fine. Let's check out some art.
Help me with this list, Lord, please. Music is another thing. There's a thing called backward masking, where even though the music played forward may sound nice, warm, and fuzzy, there are some songs that are dedicated to Satan, but you don't know it because you're hearing it played forward. But a lot of music may integrate backward masking to make the music sound really interesting. Be careful with that, because some of them are not just doing it for effect. Some of them are actually singing curses, singing an invitation, conjuring up a demonic activity for the listener. So you don't want to be one of those listeners that end up getting visitations that you didn't invite yourself. Because that's why a lot of people have a lot of demonic activity and they were like, where did this come from? Music. All right.
Here at mentalfloss.com is a story by Bill Domain entitled The Devil Wears Headphones, A Brief History of Backmasking. Mr. Domain begins. A while back, I was browsing at a favorite used bookshop and found a paperback called Backward Masking, Unmasked, written in 1983 by a youth minister named Jacob Aranza. It's an unintentionally hilarious attempt to expose the alleged backward satanic messages in rock music. For example, in the chapter called Which Way Are the Eagles Flying?, Aranza condemns the Southern California group as occultic and as having had dealings with members of the Satanic Church. He claims their song Hotel California, an ode to devil worship, contains this startlingly formal backward message. Yes, Satan organized his own religion. As Aranza denounces subliminal messages that encourage everything from homosexuality to cannabis use, he cites the usual suspects: Zeppelin, Stones, Sabbath, as well as such unlikely ones as Hall & Oates. Quote, they often impersonate women and attempt to come across to their audiences as women, end quote. And the Bee Gees, quote, Robin Gibb confesses to the hobby of pornographic drawing, end quote. His book made me curious about the history not only of backmasking, but backwards recording sound in general. It began, as many things do, with Thomas Edison. After inventing the phonograph in 1877, old Tom noticed that music in reverse sounded novel and sweet, but altogether different. In the early 1950s, avant-garde musicians began incorporating that difference into their compositions. They ran reel-to-reel tape recorders backwards, and presto, the unsettling sound of 100 little Hoovers sucking up a melody and lyric. Not sure what that references to. A decade later, the Beatles pushed backward sounds into the mainstream. The backmasking Satanism connection can be traced to a 1913 book by mystic Aleister Crowley. As Aranza points out in Stairway to Heaven, Zepp's classic tune is full of backward messages, like "So here's to my sweet Satan," and such words corrupt impressionable minds. Let's pause here to ask two questions. Can any songwriter actually write lyrics that scan forwards and backwards? And does the brain even comprehend backward messages? No to the first. There are no palindromic lyrics. And despite claims by pseudoscientists like David John Oates that the subconscious mind can decipher phonetic reversals, there's no proof that it can, or that a person's behavior would be influenced in any way if it could. That said, the brain will search for recognizable patterns in noise or gibberish. A song played backwards offers many possibilities, especially when you're told what to listen for. As an experiment, I played Louis Armstrong's "What a Wonderful World" backwards. As unlikely a song for evil messages as I could think of. I braced myself for Satchmo getting satanic. But the only line that leapt out from the gibberish was this: "Where is the sandwich, dear Dolly?" A sly reference to one of his earlier hits? Coincidence? Hello, Dolly. After a decade of government attempts to legislate against backmasking, the phenomenon peaked in 1990, when a civil action against Judas Priest alleged they were responsible for the self-harm of a teenage fan. Apparently, in the song "Better by You, Better Than Me," they had planted a backward subliminal message of "do it." The case was dismissed. What makes backmasking, especially the satanic-related stuff, seem quaint today is the plethora of malevolent songs by death metal bands who put their messages front and center. To see what I mean, click around at random on the Death Metal Archive site, darklyrics.com. Yikes, writes the author. In tribute to the golden age of backmasking, here are three of Aranza's top offenders: Led Zeppelin, "Stairway to Heaven," The Eagles, Hotel California, and ELO, Fire on High. Feel free to weigh in with your own favorite Backmasked songs. I don't know if there's comments here or not. I guess not. This last line is backwards printed. It says K-Core Evil Ganal, or Long Live Rock. Let's check out that art.
It's about Catatonia's song Dead from the Waist Down.
Okay.
Well, my mate was listening to it, and then he played it backwards. It sounds like she's saying, my favourite something chum.
Do you know if you play enough records backwards, eventually you'll hear a little voice say, get a life.